from Chattanooga, Tennessee, just 2 hours south of here. I am 26 years old. I have L5-S1 myelomeningocele, and as you guys can see, I'm able-bodied, which is something that is not incredibly common with individuals with spina bifida, and has been a source of something that I've had to overcome over the course of my journey of having spina bifida, of getting connected with my people and with my community. But nowadays, I am a huge self-advocate for myself and for others. I work at UT Chattanooga in our Disability Resource Center, helping students with disabilities navigate the college experience. And that is through accommodations, which are much different than in middle school and high school. So just keep that in mind for questions if you have anything about that, and also just independently as well.
I'm Pat Price, and I'm 36, and I have L5-S1 too, also. And I try not to let having spina bifida get me down. I work at Lipscomb University in the archives. I am the research assistant. I identify people in historic photographs and slides, and I put a picture on Facebook once a week about something having to do with a historical event related to school history, and I take inventory of the collections we get. I've lived here in Nashville all my life, and love it here, and have a great group of support, great group of friends. I go to the Hillsborough Church of Christ, and I have a great group of friends there too. It's always been very important to me.
My name is Lindsay. I'm 32 and have L4-5 myelomeningocele. I'm actually a cancer survivor as well. And my husband, who's right there, he's a disabled veteran. But I'm a freelance entertainment journalist, and I run a couple of different sites. So that's kind of awesome.
My name is Amy Safel, and I am 35. I grew up in Atlanta, and then from there went to school at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. Then before moving here in 2004, I worked for a record label for 12 years. And then, like you heard a few minutes ago, moved on to be executive director of Able Youth. And I am really active in the community. I do a variety of things. I'm very active, like I said, in sports. I have done 9 half marathons, all kind of other sports. I'm the coordinator for the adaptive rock climbing group we have here in town, and just am involved in a variety of different things. And so I'm excited to answer your questions and talk a little bit about my life with spina bifida.
Great. So just keep these different perspectives in mind. So one of the first questions that we've come up with is something that's pretty obvious, is just the barriers that we've had to overcome. What that journey's been like having spina bifida, and I know that each of us have a different experience and journey with that, and I know that all of us are going to share different parts, but also touch on some other important aspects, whether it be with like relationships, or even with marriage, or even with, as Amy's going to touch on, like moving away and going to Iowa State for college and things like that. But some of the barriers that I've had to overcome with having spina bifida, as I alluded to earlier, was just being accepted and having people realize that I actually did have spina bifida, and having people understand that just because I'm not a wheelchair user doesn't mean that I'm any more or better than someone else. So having to overcome that, I have neurogenic bowel and bladder, so I catheterize, and I have the MACE procedure done back in 2000 when I was 10 years old, and that has been a huge success and a huge catalyst to my independence as someone with spina bifida. So I have a bowel program that is every 2 days I flush my number 2, as they say, and that has worked pretty well. My bowel program became pretty stable around my junior year of high school. I know a lot of parents are kind of wondering, when is it going to end? When are these accidents going to stop happening? And just like Dr. Tame said, it's different from patient to patient. But for me, about junior year, things started to become stable. I started to understand my body, and my body started to understand me in a way. But other than that, growing up, going through like middle school and high school, definitely a victim of bullying and outcasting and those sorts of things, but over the course of time, really started to find out more about my own disability. And my biggest thing is teaching others to be a self-advocate for themselves. And when I got to college, I got the chance to really have a blank slate and really start to learn more about spina bifida and how it's impacted my life. And that started with learning more about it from, my doctors and from my parents, and learning about their journey and what it's been like having to raise me, go to doctor's appointments, and so on and so forth. And through that has empowered me to better understand me and also give back to others, and certainly this organization, and even to this day, as I'm speaking here before you guys. But one of the biggest things is that I try to have a good positive outlook every single day, and don't let my disability define me, but let me define what it is for myself. And that's something that is an ongoing process, and this is just another stepping stone to that journey. But what do you got, Pat? What do you think?
I have about the barriers and challenges. One of my first big struggles was writing physically. It was kind of hard for me to stay within the lines on like, where your teacher has you sign your name, and there's a line below it. I couldn't put the P, I couldn't put the tall part of the P, I couldn't stay above the line, and it was kind of hard for me to make the rounded letters. So my parents came up with the idea for, and I'm not sure who else, but my parents had a part in coming up with what was called computer letters. So it's just more of an angled form of like an A or B, and I've done that all my life. And I always wanted to be the cool kid, and I don't know if people were, I don't know if people just thought I was different, which I was a little, or if I was just being, in my desire to be popular, I was being annoying. I think, maybe some. But I got over it. I just got over wanting to be like other people. I just want to be me. And I think after a while, people began to accept that. That I didn't, that people began to like me, for me. And I wanted to play sports like my friends. It kind of hurt to see them all playing football and all the stuff that teenage boys do. And so that's when I got into wheelchair racing and weightlifting, and I had my parents take me to wheelchair races. I was in the Junior National Wheelchair Championships every year from '93 to 2000, and I did track every year, and weightlifting the last 4, and I've been to every state in the union. My dad and I wrote a book called Looking for Goodwill. We went and asked people about the good things in their towns and communities and lives. And we went to, I've been to Ireland and England and Scotland and France. And there were a lot of places where my dad had to carry me up steps, especially in old monuments in England and Scotland. I've had a lot of help overcoming challenges. That's one of the things that and being independent doesn't mean that you doesn't mean that you can't accept help. Because I have accepted help, and I still think I've done a pretty good job of doing things that you might consider normal and having a normal life?
I think for me, it was just a matter of trying to fit in and figure out how do I do that. And really, I have to credit Able Youth. Like I said earlier, it completely changed my life. So I don't know. I just think for me, it was just part of just kind of getting out there, kind of getting pushed in the direction of like, okay, here's all there's all these opportunities, and you can't go through them if you're not willing to put yourself out there. And so I kind of just had to force myself out of my comfort zone, and it was neat to be surrounded by people that could relate and kind of normalize situations, and you didn't stand out as much or feel like you're too different. And so I just think being involved and finding kind of what I enjoy to do, thanks to Able Youth, really is a huge part of how I kind of got to where I am now.
So we got these questions, kind of ahead of time, and I was talking to a friend, and I was like, I've been thinking about this, and I can't really think of any challenges I've had in life. And she was like, that's what you should say, to have spent, your life using a wheelchair and not really be able to think of challenges and barriers that you've had. And when I thought about it, of course, I have had challenges. When I was very young, I broke my leg a whole bunch. I went home from the hospital as a baby, my shunt not working right, and I had to have stuff redone, and had to have, a bunch of surgeries. And I know when I was younger, especially, that a lot of buildings, weren't very accessible, and I've had times where, people didn't really understand my capabilities. But I think the thing that I want to impress upon, especially people that have kids, is your kids will remember the good times. Your kids will remember the vacations you took. Your kids will remember the times you went to the park and fed the ducks, or the times that that they had in school that were fun. And the kids will remember, maybe not so much the surgery that they had, but the time that, your coworkers brought them chocolate chip ice cream and smuggled them into the hospital, which that happened in my own life. The doctors didn't even know, and my dad's coworkers smuggled a whole thing of chocolate chip ice cream in the hospital for me. But those are the things that I remember, and of course I think back on it, and I did have challenges. I did have times that were hard. I was in the hospital, some, and I had doctor's appointments, and I had sometimes kids would say things, and but for the most part, I just remember that things were fun, and that it's life, and you make the best out of the circumstances that you're given. And everybody goes through hard times and challenges, but it's what you do with them that makes the difference, and how you overcome them. And so I think that obviously I do have did have challenges and barriers, but for the most part, I think when you have a child with a disability, you might think man, how are they going to grow up adjusting to life? And I think as a parent, to be reassured that a lot of times your kids just grow up thinking this is just life, and they do remember the good times, is important to remember as well.
So yeah, kind of segueing off of that, for me, attitude is everything. It's how you respond to adversity that you're given, and those sorts of adverse moments that you have, and those obstacles come around like transitions and support. And I know Pat sort of alluded to his parents being really supportive of him and having a good community. My parents were as well, in making sure that I was in the same activities as everyone else. And that's everything from rec baseball to even academic settings, making sure that I was not put into other classrooms, and that I was with the mainstream students in my peers. As difficult as it was something that they thought was important, and they were okay with me failing, which is something that we've talked about as a group, is that we feel like a lot of parents are really reluctant to let their kids fail, but we've really all have kind of at one point in our life have fallen and have really hit rock bottom, but it's because of that experience that we're able to have grown to be more independent. So a big message that I think we all want to share is, for the parents, really don't be afraid to let your child fail, whether that be academically, socially, personally. It's going to be okay, I promise you. And as long as you're still there to support them through the process of getting back up and moving through that, they need to hit rock bottom. They need to experience what that's like so they can overcome that, because at some point in their life, you want them to be independent, and they're not going to be able to rely on you. And if you have handheld him their whole life and not let them go, it's going to be difficult for that. I think we can all agree about kind of reflecting back in some instances of our life about what that's been like. Anyone want to touch on anything about that?
I was just going to say, I think by having parents that kind of like sat back just a little bit, it made me kind of figure out who I was a little bit faster, because I was doing it for myself, and I wasn't necessarily being told, this is what I need you to do, and this is, there was a certain point, but I got to a certain age where I got to make decisions for myself, and I think that really, that really benefited me, especially once I finally did move out on my own, after I graduated high school. So I just kind of, I don't know, for me, I guess I would just say, if you're a parent, like, just being supportive of what your kids, want to do, I think makes a huge difference in their growth.
Yeah, one of the things my parents have said to me numerous times is the best thing they ever did for me is to get me to spend as much time away from them as possible. And they didn't mean that in a bad way, and it wasn't really that I spent more time away from them. I'm an only child, so first of all, know that, and I did and do, still, spend a lot of time with them. They're great people. But what they meant really was that they tried to get me involved in as many activities as possible where people who knew people with disabilities and could teach me how to do things. Them both being able-bodied people didn't necessarily know how to teach me how to do whatever skill. But they knew that if they got me in the hands of the right people, that they would teach me how to do that, and then I could come back when around them, that I could show them, oh, I could do this. And I think that really helped them believe in my abilities, because they saw somebody else had taught me how to do something, and then I came home and I showed that skill in front of them, and that really made them feel good about my chances of being able to be independent. And the other thing that I would say is that I think there's a lot to be said for sure about having help. I think everybody needs help, and everybody needs support, and everybody, I think I completely agree with what Pat said about sometimes being independent means knowing how to ask for help. But I think part of that is the asking for help part, and that if you're doing things for your child without them asking, or if you're just doing things for them, that you're not giving them the chance to be able to be independent for themselves. And that sometimes if you continue to do things for them over and over that are not age appropriate, that sometimes they then start to believe that they're not capable. And sometimes when you help them, even though you're not saying it out loud, what they really hear is that I don't believe in you enough to let you do this yourself. And that's a hard lesson to learn, is that, and some kids like me, if my parents or whoever tried to do something for me that I didn't need help with, I was super quick and super vocal about, no, let me do it myself. And but some kids don't do that. Some kids internalize that and think permanently that, okay, if the people that are closest to me don't think that I can do it, then I must not be able to. And some kids don't ever overcome that. And I've seen that in my own life. I was very fortunate to grow up I grew up in Atlanta, so I grew up around a lot of kids with disabilities, a lot of kids with Spina Bifida. And so I did have a lot of those opportunities to be around people with Spina Bifida from the very beginning, and that was very helpful, like I said. And one of the greatest things that my parents did also was that they would always ask me, especially when I got older, okay, so if I wasn't here, how would you do that? And that was a great question to ask, because first of all, that got me thinking, all right, first of all, my parents understand that there's going to be some time where I'm independent. So that first clued me in that, like, they believed that I was going to be independent. Second of all, that helped me think through, okay, how am I going to do that if they're not here? But thirdly, I think that helped them understand, okay, she does have a plan, and that helped them feel confident when I gave my answer that, okay, she's got it, she does know how to do it. And, I think sometimes in my home that not everything was accessible. Thinking especially about the laundry room. That was not a very accessible place. And also my bathroom, we never totally got that retrofitted. And so I couldn't turn on the shower by myself. Because the shower was here and the toilet was here, and I could get in the shower, but then there's no way to get over and turn on the shower. So pretty much, up until I was went away to college, I'd almost never taken a shower by myself just to turn on the water. But I knew how to do it, and that's the thing, is if your child can't physically do something, if they know how to do it, those skills will transfer over. Same thing with laundry. I couldn't physically do it just because of the way things were set up, but they taught me how to do it, and so I knew all the steps so that when I went away to college, I could confidently do it myself, because maybe I had not physically done it, but I knew all the steps. And so there's just a lot of different ways to help your kids be independent that I think, are really worthwhile ways, to do that, and getting our kids to be able to practice skills as much as possible is really worthwhile.
Pat, you want to jump in anything?
Well, my parents did a great job. Let me, I guess they've let me fail. I just don't know that. I just didn't know that. Maybe I just didn't pick up on it.
Bring the light. How you become more independent?
How I've become more independent, I do my calves more. I try to, I was doing calves more by myself. I do that a whole lot. I know it's more expedient to sometimes to have help. That's why I have help sometimes. And we tore our old house down when I was 12, and I missed my old house, but my new one is a lot better because it's more accessible. And so I know that was helping me transition to independence in adulthood, because I could take my chair and run in the house and use it more. Use it to be able to accomplish more things.
Right. What do you guys think? You want to take some questions, or want to touch on anything specific?
Yeah, questions, yeah.
Has anyone have any questions so far? Okay. Oh.
I just want to say, as far as the independence part, I see where you're coming from, because when I'm at home by myself, I do everything. I can go to the bathroom, I can go to the kitchen, I can do everything I want to on my own. Get in and out of the house. When my mom's there, I like to be the first to admit it. I'm a lazy though. I won't do nothing for myself. Mom, give me a drink. Mom, help me in the bathroom. Mom, help me outside. And she'll look at me like I'm crazy, like, you can do this stuff. Why are you asking me? And she'll just sit there. Or we'll be going out, and she knows I can go down this ramp or down the sidewalk or whatever. And she'll just walk off and leave.
Yeah, and speaking from my own life and my time with able youth, the kids that have parents that don't do anything for them are the kids that do the best. They're kids that have parents just like that will let the kids do things for themselves, are the ones that do the best. I think even yesterday, I guess it was, I was somewhere and I've driven since I was 16 like everybody else, and I have pretty poor balance, and so I have a van that has a ramp that comes, and then I get in my car and then I transfer to the driver's seat. Well, I knew this, but I had parked a little bit close to the curb because there wasn't really a choice, and so I got off of it myself, and then but I knew getting back would be a challenge, but I was already out of my car, and I was like, I'll just figure that out when the time comes. So, I did, and I had to kind of do this weird, wheelie to kind of get over it. And so, but those problem-solving skills that you develop from having to do things on your own, are great. But then there are times, that you have to ask for help, and that's okay too, because sometimes to be more independent, you do have to ask for help if you want to, get on with your life and do things like everybody else. Sometimes you do have to ask for help, and it's kind of a hard balance to figure out, when those times are you do things for yourself or when you have to ask, but sometimes you do.
Pat, you want to mention something?
Yes. I want to mention something I forgot. When I was in college, and even some before that, I had a hard time taking notes and keeping up with the teacher. And so I got some of my friends to take notes for me. And also, I was a history major in college, and a lot of the tests were discussion tests. Well, it was kind of hard for me to express myself writing. And I can remember one particular test, I left feeling very bad and was kind of upset. But I was trying to explain myself, and the lady that was the disability service person at Lipscomb, where I went to school, was saying, well, I'm not your editor, just try to explain yourself. And I told Mom, and she was able to get the teacher to get the teacher to let me record my answers to tests. I took tests in the Disability Services Center on campus, and I was able to speak into a tape recorder. And later on, I was able to record lectures of the professors instead of taking notes. So technology is a wonderful thing.
I was just going to say, I think what really helped me too was my mom was always kind of in the background when I got old enough to really understand what all was really involved in taking care of myself and being independent. But she still kind of let me figure out my own way, because ultimately my goal was to live on my own and be independent without my mom or family there doing everything. And so I think just her kind of being in the background and letting me figure it out, but still, offer solutions, I think really, really made a huge difference for me and all of that. So
Something that I had said earlier is, when you think about kids doing things on their own, I think, I remember learning to get myself dressed or learning to do whatever skill it was, and I promise you would much rather have your kid at a young age crying because learning new things is hard than you would at a kid when they're, say, 25, crying because they felt like everybody else passed them by and that everyone else left them and they were the only ones that didn't get to live up to their full potential. And so I think about, when you think about those kinds of things, that, it's not easy to learn to be independent, and that we all went through those challenges of having to learn those skills, and some skills came easy and some skills did not. But looking back on it now, as we all do, it was all really worth it because we're all able to be independent, and those things do get easier. You do learn to do them, and they take maybe an hour at the beginning, and maybe they take 15 minutes or less. As you kind of go on, and so to get through the beginning and learn, even though it's frustrating, it's so worth it looking at it now and knowing what the four of us can all do and how we've been able to really live up to our potentials.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking off of that, what really led to my independence was when I was 14 and I had like a severe UTI, so urinary tract infection, and my doctor, you know, asking me about my bladder measurement, which is also a question on here, and asking how often I catheterized, and then, you know, me saying, oh, you know, about 4 times a day, which is incredibly unhealthy. And it took a severe UTI infection and a hospital visit for me to really wake up and understand I need to start taking a hold of my independence. I need to start really being responsible for my own personal health and catheterizing 5-6 times a day, making sure that my bladder is completely empty. And my whole thing prior to that was, it takes so long. You know, I have to get it out, I have to insert it, I have to wait, and you know, it's not fast, it's not efficient, but it's important. And that's how I'm able to live independently. And it's better than the alternative, which is, you know, having a diaper, or pull-ups or something like that. And so that was something that really was a wake-up call for me, was having to have that sort of negative experience to be the catalyst, to get me to become really independent in my health. Michael, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I mean, my question may be a little bit weird. It may sound even a little redundant, because we've touched on this, but I've heard, you know, back here about being lazy at times and being independent. I'm kind of the step parent, a part of her life with her daughter, and so one of the things I'm always trying to discern is where do you lean on making a 9-year-old daughter independent, you know, versus, you know, seeing her being frustrated and trying to help her. I mean, you touched on that a lot,
Yeah.
which I know where you sound on it, which is great. Versus her being just lazy herself and not doing something that she, you know, that kind of stuff. So sometimes it's hard for me in my situation to discern, because you know, we got to be good together here. So I've got to make sure I'm not overstepping my bounds, going, you know, she really can do that. I mean, I don't know, like, you see what I'm saying? So I'm just trying. I mean, no questions other than just I'm just trying to discern. Maybe other people could touch on that.
Yeah, how do you discern when a child's just being lazy or whether they
I
can
think it's a
actually do
communication
something?
thing. You know, I really think that it's really, really important for the children to be involved in their care and for them to be able to communicate and feel comfortable communicating. Because not everybody, you know, is okay with saying, I need help, or I'm struggling with this, or this is bothering me, or, you know, I went through the awkward teenage years, and, you know, I went through the whole, like, nobody understands me, you know, I'll never get it, and then I found Able Youth and found out I wasn't the only one.
I think for me, like on my end, I'm wanting to push her. You know, like not push her down. I'm wanting to push her to. See if she can survive. No, I'm wanting to push her to do more. But again, I've not been in her life as long, so I haven't had that track record of being. Miss Arkansas, go ahead. I know you got something.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, no, I am a parent who has been an enabler, or I would consider an enabler, because I do just about everything for my daughter. I even cut her cupcake and put it on the fork, okay? I get what you're saying. There are times I should force her to do it, and I hear what y'all are saying, but it's so much faster and easier for me to do it. I hear what you're saying. I know I need to make her do more, and she should do more.
So then does it become a matter of...
You're preventing them from doing it.
But not only that, it become a matter of I feel valuable and important because I can do that, versus letting her do it herself, because really that's going to help her more.
Right.
Even though it's making me feel like maybe I'm not as needed as much anymore.
I agree.
I know, but you want her to be as independent as possible.
That's what I'm saying. I need to make her do more. I'm saying I ought to make her do more. But it's easier for me to do it. I mean, I'll say right in that moment, when you're saying wait the 30 or 45 minutes, I'm going, don't have time, I'm going to do it, we're going to go on. So where do you call that line of waiting? You know what I'm saying?
And so, especially when it comes to like getting dressed and things, that was, for me, the way that started out was that was a weekend thing only. And that when you're learning, that is not a thing to try to learn when you're getting up for school in the morning, because that just isn't fun for anybody. But but then you start to build. First of all, you start to get faster. Then you start to build awareness of how long does it take, and then something we push our kids to do in Independence Camp for Able Youth is, you know, it's okay if it takes you 45 minutes, but you have to know that, and you have to be able to set your alarm on time to be able to do that and budget that time for yourself. Like, however long it takes is however long it takes, but, you know, as long as you plan that for yourself, it's fine. You know, and you do get faster, but it takes that self-awareness part to know. But yeah, I mean, I think when I started learning to do things myself, I started in times where time didn't matter as much while I was learning, and then, you know, got faster from there.
And then you kind of, like, you get into a schedule, and I think that that's kind of a time management thing. Like, it's better to learn for yourself. How long does it take? Because I don't want to be late, and, you know, what if it costs you a job because you're late, because you don't know how to manage your time, you know? So I think you kind of have to think kind of ahead of time and look into the future and think, like, you know, your parents aren't always going to be around forever, unfortunately, you know, and so, you know, I know my mom has peace knowing that I can take care of myself. You know, when I met my husband, I was already independent. I could take care of myself. I didn't need somebody to do that for me, and I think that that helped her have confidence in me, which in turn kind of gave me confidence too. So
I think we're going to talk a little bit about college,
Absolutely.
too, and that was something that, so I went to college in South Carolina. You know, I definitely did have challenges growing up with my parents. I think fully grasping, you know, that I could be independent, but only occasionally in certain things. Honestly, from the time I was little, it was never really a question. It was always, you know, you're going to be independent, you're going to be successful one day, and you know, you're going to have the ability to go away to college. So I never really questioned my parents' belief in me that that I could do that. And so, you know, I think that we started and we've tried to figure out, you know, how far away I could go and how that was all going to work. And a lot of times throughout my whole life, I was taught to be very proactive and taught to, you know, cut things off before it became a challenge. So just anytime I needed something to make my needs known from the beginning, rather than, you know, waiting to see how it panned out. Usually it panned out better if I made my needs known from the beginning. And so, you know, we were looking at colleges and where it was going to be successful for me. And honestly, I know this is not the way to go for most people, but I grew up around a lot of people with disabilities and things. So I actually went somewhere where I was going to be probably either the only or the one of only maybe a couple people with disabilities on my campus. I kind of wanted to see if I could do it. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. So I went to Furman in Greenville, South Carolina. It's a smaller school, about 2 hours and 45 minutes away from where I grew up, and so that was a comfortable distance for me. I was able to live alone. I had a dorm. I was in a dorm room and shared a bathroom with 2 other girls. They were the 2 older classmen that were resident advisors, and shared a bathroom with them, and then moved to on-campus apartment. But it was very important for me to stay in contact with the Disability Services department. I didn't necessarily need the academic help, but that just wasn't really an issue that I needed help with. But I did need help making sure I had a desk to sit in, making sure that people knew that there was a person with a disability that was going to be in their class, and just making sure that everything kind of panned out okay, and that my classes were in an okay location, and making sure I did my schedule right so that I could get from class to class. And overall, it was a wonderful experience. I had a lot of challenges that I had to work through living on my own for the first time. Just the way things panned out, I really had hardly ever spent even a night alone by myself, and that was the first time I kind of threw myself into it. Like I said, I had never done laundry by myself until I had gone to college, but I knew I had learned how to do it, and I was going to figure it out. And so I think just to build the skills that maybe if you haven't done it yourself, to know that at least you have the confidence that you're going to be able to figure it out. But overall, college was a great experience. I had an issue between my junior and senior year where they changed their offer in the on-campus apartment that I was promised to live in that was accessible, when they all of a sudden said, no, we want you to live in this other place, and it was clearly not accessible, and so they made a big deal about it. My parents had to come up, and it was a big deal, but my parents came up, and once we had the meeting, and they brought in this outside engineer to make any accommodations, and he looked at the housing director and said, there's no way she can live here. Like, there's no way she can live here, and it was kind of over after that. And so, but to have my parents be able to come up and help me with that, it was just sometimes where you just know that you do the best you can to advocate for yourself, but you still need people on your side. And that was really important for me to learn that I wasn't really doing anything wrong. You know, I could advocate for myself just fine, and just in some instances, you just need people on your side to help you. Same kind of thing came up when after I moved here, and I was getting ready to have a condo built, and I lived by myself in a condo, and the builders were having some issues agreeing to make some things accessible. It took my parents, me, my realtor, and my realtor's boss pretty much every day making sure that things were going to be accessible. That's just what it was, and we got it done, and it worked out fine. You know, there are just a lot of issues that come with being independent and going into the working world and going to college and things, but it completely can be done, and it's kind of a team effort sometimes, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it to be able to be independent and to go off to college or go off to live on your own. That is definitely something that I fully advocate for and think that everyone should strive to do, because it's such a great experience, and it does take constant work and constant communication, like you said, to have an independent life and to make those arrangements, especially when it comes to college and being in a new environment. But definitely something that can be done.
Absolutely, I echo all of that. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up in just a few minutes. So I think what would be nice if we went down the line and just kind of give some advice and some further guidance to the audience. And one of the things that I would say towards that is, I'm going to say two things. Everyone in this, every individual in this room that has spina bifida or not can go to college. You absolutely can, despite what anyone's ever told you. You can. Accommodations in college are not much different than they are in high school. You can get accessible classrooms. There's accessible technology that is being developed every day that is helping make universal design a much more appropriate format for the classroom setting. And your needs will be met at your university. So please just keep that in mind. The Office of Disability Services will help meet those needs. Like Pat said, you just have to ask for help and make sure that you are taking the initiative to do that. The other last thing that I will say is community is everything to me. Finding your support of community to help take you along the journey of spina bifida, whether that's your parents, your friends, your church group, your whoever, to help you through the journey is going to make your life a lot better. So if you don't have that community, start finding it. Start looking at yourself, and if is it a me thing or is it a them thing, and start trying to build your community. So that's some of the advice that I would give. What about you, Pat?
Look for the good that you can do for others, and don't just focus on yourself. I've always believed that that's what I'm called to do as a Christian, and I know that living with spina bifida can be a challenge, but I believe that you should still try to find the good things that you can do for others and not worry, and just take the focus on yourself, off of yourself. And I almost cried, but I didn't. When it's been more than a couple weeks ago now, we have a new ramp at our church building, and I just happened to be going in the back of the church building. I was talking with a friend just headed in worship, and I see Jennifer Henry back there, the girl with the red hair, who has a new little boy named Jack. What, 4 months? 4 months. He said, she's just, I said, so this is Jack, huh? And she said, yeah. It was the first time I met him. And she said, you're going to be a good encouragement for my son. And that's what I want to be. I want to be a good encouragement for Jack and for Dara's son, Gowan. And I just feel like that's what I'm supposed to do.
I would just kind of echo what they've said. Is like, you know, it's okay if your kids fail. I know it's really hard as parents, I completely understand it, but it's kind of part of the learning process, it's part of the growing process. So I would just, you know, I kind of lost my thought. You know, don't limit your child just based off of physical disability. You know, I've hit pretty much all of the normal milestones in my life, and I really think that has a lot to do with how my parents supported me and everything. And so, and also just, you know, I happened to marry somebody in a wheelchair as well, and that wasn't because he was in a wheelchair. We have a lot more in common than that. So, like, I guess just don't be in the mindset that your child can't find happiness or can't find love or can't be, you know, successful in whatever way you want to define success just because they're, you know, they have a disability. And, you know, just encourage them and find ways to really help them, just like community, they said, you know, and just help them find the support so that they can kind of learn from people that have been through it and have been, I guess, kind of the success stories.
I think, piggyback on what she had said, you know, perseverance. All of your kids, all of you, the adults here, you know, you can be successful, you know, and to find the ways that you can be successful for yourself, to find the ways that are best for you to accomplish your goals. There are ways for you to accomplish your goals no matter whatever they are. You know, all of the kids, the families of kids here, they can all be independent, they can all be successful. It takes a lot of perseverance sometimes, but it can be done. And you know, I think we all are successful adults, like Lindsay said. You know, it's definitely possible to have a job and to be married. And I think a lot of times parents unknowingly put pressure on their kids to only think that they can marry someone with a disability, or only think that whatever, and they will find happiness in whoever. If they want to marry someone with a disability, awesome. If they want to marry somebody that doesn't have a disability, awesome. If they want to be single, awesome. You know, it doesn't matter. And I think that they, you know, to keep an open mind that whatever your kid wants to do in life and to be successful and to reach for their goals, whatever their goals are, that they can be accomplished. And it takes a lot of perseverance, but it definitely can be done.
I think we're out of time. Okay. So thank you guys again. We'll be here towards. I mean, we're going to stay the rest of the evening. If you guys have questions, please feel free to approach us. That's the first step in trying to figure out what's next or what you want answered is just asking us. We're pretty open. Thank you so much on behalf of Pat and Lindsay and Amy. Thanks so much. So quick.
Thank you guys. I will keep it short. I know it's been a long day. But my name is Christy Wass. I work out of the national office with the Spina Bifida Association. So I just wanted to take a minute to give out several thank yous to everybody who helped make this day possible. All of the staff at Vanderbilt and the Children's Hospital, especially Rose, who kind of started this whole thing, worked on this whole project, this whole day from start to finish. Thank you, Rose. As well as thank you to our presenters and our panelists for your time today and for